Now I want to show how visually different scenarios of trendy artistic strategies might look like. Each artist embodies each scenario differently in their own way. When we talk about a scenario of a strategy, we don't get hung up on a form. And now I'm going to tell you about an artist who also uses myth-making scenario, but with different components of strategizing. Ronit Baranga picks up her own components of strategizing, differing from those of Daniel R. Sham we talked about. Ronit Baranga explores emotional states and relationships. You know, there is a common phrase, walls have ears, heels have eyes. Ronit Baranga's pottery has all the other parts of the body, not only ears or eyes. That's a question. Would we ever like to eat something from a plate that looks like it's going to eat you up? Or drink from a cup with the human fingers sticking out of the bottom? The artist jokes that she recommends using her tea sets if we want to lose some weight. The sculptures are at the same time very realistic. They are sensual, emotional. Ronit Baranga draws inspiration in everyday life and, of course, in mythological sources. She has a rather bizarre and certainly curious visual language. Baranga combines hyperrealistic sculptures with a tendency towards the metaphysical, the dark, and the hidden. It evokes, her sculptures, they evoke some tension, something between temptation and disgust. Cake is a hyperrealistic sculpture by Ronit Baranga of two nude female characters studying a frosted cake tapped with menacing mouths. Desirable and threatening at the same time, the cake is the object to consume, or perhaps it will consume its admirers. And of course, there are psychoanalytic Freud connotations here, because it's a clash between impulse and reason, between fear and desire. These combinations turn a seemingly naive situation, like here, into a surreal composition. The table of Ronit Baranga is a microcosm inhabited by irresistible temptations. The tea set comes to life, a small community of fragile, polite creatures. Here, the Grave Watcher's childhood. That's a Gravekeeper's series of Ronit Baranga. And this series, they were influenced by two ancient figures, the tomb keepers of the Tang dynasty. And here we're dealing with one more scenario, a reinterpretation. I titled that a reinterpretation. That's a scenario of rethinking of the preceding tradition of art. Ronit enters a dialogue with the art of previous centuries. I will definitely dwell on this scenario of reinterpretation, but a bit later, because now we're talking about different forms and embodiments of myth-making scenario. Another example of this myth-making scenario is Pierre Huyghe. This is where myth-taking accelerates to the scale of cosmogony. Pierre Huyghe, it's very difficult to speak two languages at the same time. Pierre Huyghe creates his own world with its traditions, histories, rituals, another dimension, something otherworldly, a space in which his miraculous beings can exist. The artist is engaged in the creation of a cosmogony where The mix of culture, religion, and art generates new forms and completely incredible creatures. In his work for Documenter 13, the artist has created a set of non-organic plant, animal, and human elements in an abandoned section of Castle's Park. In the middle, there was a sculpture of a half-lion woman with a giant swarm of bees instead of a head, and two dogs roaming around in the mud and construction debris. One of them named Human, greyhound with a front paw painted bright pink. And many other components were scattered around. Pierre Huyghe says that life is the main interest of his practice. He says, I'm interested in how to quantify different versions of life, how to amplify the presence of things.